Well, we are in week 2 of teaching our children theology at home. We're still on this topic of the nature of God. And this week we're looking at five different aspects about the nature of God. And so, as it is with children, there's a balance of we don't want to go too simplistic, but we certainly don't want to go too deep. We want to give them a theology that they can grow into, but yet also a theology that they can understand. And so as we go through these lessons, as I go through this video, this is more for the parent, but to help give you a good idea of it, and then some advice and some verses that we'll look at. So we go through the verses. Some of these have quite a few verses that I've tagged them to. You don't necessarily need to go over every single Bible verse with your child. Based on the attention span of your child, you might want to just do 1 or 2 verses per section, or you might break the sections up over the next number of days. At any rate, let's talk about that. So we are still on the nature of God, and one of the things we want to do is talk about the idea of maximum. God is what we can call a maximum being when it comes to a number of the characteristics that we would use when talking about God. We would use the maximum amount of them. He is all-powerful. He is fully in control. He is all-knowing. He is omnipresent. He is fully good. He is eternal, like the maximum amount of, well, actually it's outside of time. That one's kind of different. At any rate, one of the things you can do is first of all, as the lesson plan says, is to talk to your child about describing something. So maybe have them describe someone in their life, or someone that they know, or a thing, and get them to broaden their idea of description. Sure, we could describe someone by the color of their hair, their height, the job that they do, but we can also describe them in their characteristics, how they behave, how they respond to things. There's a lot of different things. And then you can go over and you can ask them questions. What is the strongest animal that they can think of? What is the best tasting food? Or the biggest or scariest or fastest of a certain thing? And then point them that those things in their mind anyhow have the maximum amount of that thing. So if you think of the tastiest food, in your opinion, it holds the maximum amount of taste or good taste, I suppose, in that category. And so, because we're talking about that, and God is a maximum being. If there was some being that was more powerful than God, or more in control than God, more present or more good or more creative, then that being would be God. One of the definitions or standards that makes God God is that he's this maximum being, that there's none like him. He's the highest in those areas. He is the highest, right? So firstly, we're talking about powerful. I don't think any of the topics this week are as deep as the ones from last week. We talked about the Trinity last week, so that's deep. We talked about God in time, that he's eternal, so that's deep. These ones are easier in my opinion. So God is all-powerful. God is the most powerful being that there is. When we look at the things that God did in the Bible, we see this clearly. How he freed the Hebrews from Egypt, how he flooded the earth, his judgment on Sodom, the creation account in Genesis, and even the power over death to resurrect Jesus from the grave. So we can talk to our children and just explain that when it comes to God, he is all-powerful. He is maximally powerful. There's none with more power than him. And then to consider these verses. As I said, you don't need to look at them all with your child, but you yourself, you should look at them all, I would say. First being Jeremiah chapter 10, verses 12. It is he who made the earth by his power, who established the world by his wisdom, and by his understanding stretched out the heavens. Then we have Psalm 62:11. Once God has spoken, twice I have heard this, that power belongs to God. We have Job chapter 38, verses 1 to 4. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Dress for action like a man. I will question you, and you will make it known to me. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. And then Romans 1:20 for our final one, for this section anyhow. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. The idea that by God's nature and power that we even see just in creation, that it does not that is enough to get man's attention. So you can look at those verses and you can talk to your child about the power of God. Ask them questions, right? A good way to help children learn and people learn in general is to get them thinking and to ask questions. And so one of the questions you can ask is, how do we see God's power displayed in the Bible? And get them to talk about that. Well, as I've said before, one of the things that I think we should do is when we're going through the Bible verses is use a physical Bible. That's better for their mind anyhow to see that than the phone or a tablet or a computer, and it gets them to know where the chapters and books in the Bible are. And a step further would be to take the time and be patient. Allow them to find the verses based on their age would be a good practice to do. Secondarily, God is in control. And so one of the things that we need to highlight is the importance of having control when one has power. And the more powerful something is, the more control is required. In the little description here, I used the example of the motorcycles that I've had over the years. When I was a teenager and I first got my motorcycle license, I bought a little Honda CBR 125. Very small bike, fun bike, but very low power, wouldn't go fast, and that was a good thing for young Chris to have. And then as I gained understanding of the bike and how to ride it properly and control it, I sold that one and I got a bigger one. And if I was to get a bike today, I'd get one with even more power because I have the ability to control it more. The wonderful thing about God is that He is in control. What He is doing and why. He never slips up. He never does something too much or too little. And this can be a really easy thing for our children to understand. The motorcycle analogy might not really work with children. In fact, I don't think it would. But it should work with you. What we can simply do with your child is talk about how areas of their life that they're not in control. And you don't need to make this a moment of shame where you talk about their emotional outbursts or anything like that. You can mention those. But there's other ways to do it without poking a blame at them kind of thing. You can just simply talk about a coloring sheet and how it's difficult sometimes to color in between the lines. Or you can talk about if they've crashed on their bicycle as they're learning, right? That they lack control over the bike because they haven't figured it out quite yet. You could talk about a time where you crashed your bike or your car or something of the sort. We can just simply, there's a ton of examples we can use to display the fact that we lack control at times. This is an area that we fail in, that we don't have maximum control in. And so that's one of the wonderful things about God is that He is in full control. It is actually impossible for God to not be in control. And so consider these verses. Let me see where we are. Colossians 1:17, and He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. The idea that He's holding the world together, that it's by His power, by His control. Job 37:5-6, God thunders wondrously with his voice. He does great things that we cannot comprehend. For to the snow, he says, fall on the earth. Likewise the downpour, his mighty downpour. And so you can talk about that. You can talk about how God controls the weather. He makes things happen. What he says happens. You can take it almost a step further and bring up the story of Jesus and the disciples when he speaks to the wind, right? That was an eye-opening moment to the disciples. They're out on the boat and this great storm comes through, and Jesus has this, he gets up and he's like, oh, you have little faith, what are you scared of, kind of thing. And he says, be still, and instantly the wind stops and the waves stop and everything settles down. And the response was, who is this man that even the wind and the waves listen to him? God is in control. Psalm 103 verse 19, the Lord has established his throne in the heavens, and his kingdom rules over all. God is a king, the King of kings, and so his authority is that of a king. What he says will be is what will be. And then Isaiah 46, 9-10. Remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from the ancient times things not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will accomplish my purpose. God has set the boundaries of time. God has called all the things of the past and made them happen, and the things that are yet to happen, he has decreed them as well. He is in control. Fully. It's a good thing to do, right? If God was all powerful without control, it would be quite chaotic, but it's not. All knowing. Demonstrate to your child how well you know them. So you can talk about their favorite colors, their favorite sports, their favorite foods, their favorite toys, where they put things, or what their favorite book is. We can know our children pretty well, pretty good, right? It might seem to our child at times like we know everything. But as you know, you don't. And you might be able to remember a moment where your child came to ask you a question and your answer was, I don't know, and that kind of shocked them. And they're like, how do you not know the answer to this? Well, Daddy doesn't know everything. However, God does know everything. He knows the hearts of every person who walks the earth. He knows the laws of nature. He himself wrote them, once again pointing back to his power and his control. There's nothing that God does not know. Psalm 139, verses 2-6. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my laying down. You are acquainted with all of my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in, behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is too high. I cannot attain it. The knowledge of God is so great that we can't even reach up to it. We should pursue knowledge and wisdom, yes, but we should also understand that we will never have the knowledge and wisdom at the level that God does. He is all-knowing. He has maximum knowledge, right? Hebrews chapter 4, verse 13. And no creature is hidden from his sight, but all are naked and exposed to the eyes of him to whom we must give account. He sees all. He knows all. There's nothing that we can hide from him. 1 John chapter 3, verse 20. For whatever our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart. He knows everything. This is a good verse. We preached through 1 John over the last number of years, or at least I did, here at the church on Sundays. You can go back through YouTube. I believe the whole series is on YouTube as well. But there's this thought of our heart condemns us, and sometimes we think things about ourselves that's not true. And I'm sure your child has done this, and I'm sure they've even expressed it to you. You punish your child, or you're busy doing something, and they come to have this emotional experience, and they say something that seems absolutely ridiculous. Oh, it feels like no one loves me. It's like, of course we love you. Of course we're here for you. Right? Whenever your heart condemns you, one thing you can know is that God is greater than our heart. He knows what is true. Our mind will often tell us things about ourselves that is not true. So trust God instead. That He knows. He knows everything about us, even the things we ourselves don't know. All of our blind spots, everything. He knows us perfectly. Matthew 29 to 30. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny, and not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father, but even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Right? The knowledge of God, it's ultimate. So even the things that seem pointless. Why number the hairs on my head? Why know the names of the stars? Why does that matter? It doesn't matter to us. But it's interesting to point out that even these minute little things, but that are vast and many, God knows them all. His knowledge is perfect. It's maximum. And so that's a wonderful thing. Then we have this word you can teach your child, omnipresent. It's not necessarily important that they remember what that word means, but it's a fun little thing for kids to learn new words. But he's everywhere. He's all present. With your child, you can go on Google Maps. I know my little guy Hudson, he loves going on Google Maps, and he'll just go all over the place. And we'll start at home, and he'll move around, and it's really fun when he finds something that seems familiar to him. He's like, oh, that's the school, or that's the church, or that's a graveyard, or something like that. He's excited. But do that. You can go on Google Maps with your child, show them where your house is, where their school is, the church building, grandparents, their favorite park, etc. And then go to a specific place to find them or it. We have to go to a specific place to find someone. If I need to talk to someone in person, maybe some emergencies happen and I got to go talk to them, I have to go to where they are and reach out to them, or I can call them. But if I want to physically talk to the person, it's not the case with God. He is everywhere. And while this means we can't play hide and go seek with him, it does mean that he is always with us. And it's a good thing to teach to our children, is that God is with us. Even in the hard times and the difficult times, God is with us. We just have 2 verses for this section. Psalm 139. Grab this. No, that's not that. Psalm 139, verses 9 to 10. If I take wings in the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. The 2 verses before that talk about this idea as well, that we cannot escape God. He's always with us. And then Jeremiah, sorry about this, 23:24. Can a man hide himself in secret places so that I cannot see him, declares the Lord? Do I not fill heaven and earth, declares the Lord? He is everywhere. He's all present. These are a lot easier lessons, quicker lessons than they were last week, but they're important for us to understand. They're really important for us to understand. And lastly, here's the thing. This is the most important one I would say of this week, because it's one thing to be all-powerful and in control and all-knowing and omnipresent. Those are important things. But if you're not good, then those are horrifying things to have as a character. But one of the beautiful things about God is he is fully good. In fact, he is our measure of good. He's maximally good. All the qualities and characteristics that we have mentioned, they make for a very powerful, unavoidable, unconquerable being. And that can be very intimidating. And we should fear God. And that's one of the reasons why we should fear God. And we should fear the judgment of God, but let that fear be something that guides us into following him, and a fear with love as well. But the good news is that he's maximally good. And so while we should fear him and allow that fear to keep us in line with him, it's not like fearing a wild animal that has rabies that could attack at any moment unprovoked. Rather, God is good. And it's because of his goodness that we can trust him. We should make sure to explain that good does not mean giving us whatever we want. The world today has very perverted definitions of things, and good is certainly one of them. Oh, if it feels good to you, it's good. No, definitely not. If it's what your mind truly wants, then it's good. No, definitely not. If it gives you a sense of delight and excitement, then it's good. No. No, 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 no. God defines what is good, and he himself is good. And so his judgment, for example, is good. When he brings judgment on mankind, the flood, Sodom, and the future day of judgment, those are done out of his goodness. And so that's one of the things that we should express to our children is the goodness of God. Wonderful thing. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 4. The rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are justice. A God of faithfulness and without iniquity, just and upright is he. 1 Chronicles 16:34. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. 1 John 4:16. So we have come to know and believe the love that God has for us. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. And then, finally, Psalm 25, verse 8. Good and upright is the Lord. Therefore, he instructs sinners in the way. One of the things that we know about God is that him being maximally good means that the ways that he calls man to is good. And so if we want to be good people, it's not done by the world's standards or by the opinion of men. You can only be good by following the ways of God and through repentance because of our sin. That's a conversation for another day. At any rate, go through that lesson with your child. Make sure you have them understanding what these things mean. Highlight the fact that he's good. That's very important. As well, this last week, your children would have started a new memory verse. It's Psalm 23, verse 4. They should already, from months ago, have Psalm 23, verses 1 to 3 memorized. What we're going to do over the next bit is actually go through the whole psalm, which will take some time, sure. But it's going to be awesome at the end when they, and you, hopefully, and myself, have that full psalm memorized. And so Psalm 23, verse 4, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Even there, right, this whole picture, we look at the characteristics of God, and as I'm going through the valley of the shadow of death, the most difficult times I can imagine, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, and you are powerful, and you are in control, and you are knowledgeable, and you are present, and you are good. And so your rod and your staff, this tool for guidance, but also a weapon for defense, I'm not afraid of them necessarily. They comfort me. Isn't that great? So I hope that's an encouragement to you. As always, if you have any questions at all throughout the week as you're going through this with your child, send those my way, and I'm happy to help. It's a pretty simple lesson, I think. And next week, I believe we are moving on from the nature of God to the study of men, which would be anthropology, I think. At any rate, have a great week and honor God in all that you do.